Rising wave of Boko Haram attack. Minister of Defense to hold talks with counterparts in Chad.
Nigerian army dismisses as fake videos and information making the rounds over Metele attack.
NTA clears air on inability to transmit live AUN's Founders Day. Insists presidency has nothing to do with the situation.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we are focusing on unearthing the motives for corruption and also values and ethics, need for attitudinal change.
It is an established fact that Africa and indeed Nigeria's underdevelopment is as a result of inability of leaders to properly harness the potentialities of the nation, formulate and execute policies, and above all, corruption.
Yes, Kirian, the factors you mentioned do contribute to underdevelopment in this part of the world, and many solutions have been suggested, but the problem persists.
That's right, because the corruption in particular has long been in the front burner, with agencies specifically established to curb the menace.
And despite the recent successes in tackling corruption by securing high-level convictions and other measures, many instances are still reported, making one to wonder why it appears so difficult to tame the monster of corruption.
And the research attributed it to failure to plan, invest in human capital through sustainable structures, which make citizens to do anything to get access to funds to meet their needs.
Consequently, underdevelopment, high level of stealing of state funds, poverty, and the associated ills are prevalent, as some citizens are perturbed about their needs and their families, even at the expense of the state.
Well, the motive for corruption varies. Both the poor and people with enough to last them lifetime in comfort are on many occasions found to be neck deep in corruption. I think that brings about the situation where, you know, corruption is not just, it doesn't have any class. People who engage in corruption, whatever their status is, corruption is pervasive.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's also a matter of gradation. That's to say, from the lower levels to the upper levels. If you provided the opportunity for any officer who is low-ranking not to do the proper thing, in other words, to be corrupt or to abuse his or her position, instances abound. Well, Kirian, some of the points that you have raised are issues that will be featured on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, as we have an expert who has conducted research for several decades on the motives for corruption. So the answers as to why it appears difficult to address the issue, despite being identified as a long-term challenge, is one that, of course, will engage our attention as we unearth the motives behind corruption. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. I thank you for being with us on the program this morning.
And I am Kirian Umayo, joining Kingsley to welcome you once again to the program, which, after unearthing the motives for corruption, we'll discuss as a second topic, values and ethics, need for attitudinal change. Not forgetting our companion segments, newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment needs. But first, let's take the news highlights with Ogwa Vivian Onyedibia. Good morning, Ogwa.
Good morning, Kirian, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. We begin the early morning news with security matters. The Minister of Defense, Mansour Dan Ali, is scheduled to visit Chad within the week to hold a bilateral meeting with his Chadian counterpart, General Daoud Yahya. The visit is in continuation of consultations with ministers of defense of multinational joint task force troops contributing countries, which includes Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and Benin Republic. The minister's visit to Chad will revolve around strengthening the operations of the multinational joint task force to enable it achieve its mandate of eliminating security threats and creating a safe and secure environment in its area of responsibility. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Army says its attention has been drawn to several social media, print, electronic and online publications about the recent attack on 157 Task Force Battalion at Metele. Confirming the attack on the location on 18th November 2018, the Army says it is, however, necessary to correct several misinformation. The Army, in a statement, explained that it has laid down procedures for reporting incidents that involves its personnel who fall casualty in action, which involve notifying the next of kin of the troop first. It observed that several social media, print and online publications have been brandishing false casualty figures and footages, thereby spreading the propaganda intent of the terrorists. The statement indicates that the situation at the location is under control, as reinforcing units have been able to repel the terrorists and stabilize the situation. And in a related development, the Nigerian Air Force has described the video clip currently circulating on various social media platforms, purportedly showing a terrorist attack at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, in Lagos State, as false. A statement by the Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, categorically states that the airport was and has never been under any attack. The video being circulated instead shows an airport security simulation tagged Exercise Thunderbolt, which took place on 8th November 2016. The exercise was aimed at training the Nigerian Air Force personnel and other security agencies on security response and actions to be taken in the event of an attack. It advised the public to disregard the video and also refrain from sharing or uploading unverified videos, pictures or articles in order not to cause panic. The Nigerian Air Force is assuring all local and international travelers that Nigeria's airports are safe and they can go about their travels without any fear. The Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, says government is stepping up efforts to ensure secured environment in the nation's 104 unity schools by providing basic security infrastructure. Speaking to the media against the backdrop of insurgent activities in the northeast and the incidents of kidnapping in some parts of the country, the minister says government will, among other things, provide perimeter fencing in the schools that are yet to have one, install CCTV cameras within the premises, street lights powered by solar system, and modern security gates to secure the schools.
The federal government has provided a total of 2,025,811,972 naira 99 kobo for the provision of these facilities. The Tenders Board of the Ministry has already approved the award of the contracts for the provision of these facilities.
And away from security matters now, the All Progressives Congress APC says it is optimistic of greater success during the upcoming general elections. This was the statement of the party's national chairman Adams Oshomole and other stalwarts during a grand rally to welcome defectors from the People's Democratic Party and the Kwankwasiya movement in Kano. And still on politics, the presidential candidate of African Action Congress says if voted into power, his administration will place high premium in education. He was speaking in Kano at a rally to formally present the Sowore Rufai ticket to the electorate in the state. Mohammed Rabiu Ali reports that AAC candidate is the first to launch his presidential campaign in Kano.
Grow it in interest of outsiders, but in interest of the people of Nigeria. We want to introduce and infuse technology in the agricultural sector where it is important for the people of Kano and also provide support for small businesses.
And the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, says technical challenge was the reason why it did not broadcast live the 13th Founders Day anniversary ceremony of the American University of Nigeria, Yola, as against misinformation from the Atiku Media Office, alleging that NTA deliberately and under instruction from the presidency refused to broadcast the event live. A statement by the Director General of the NTA, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, explained that the allegation is not only far from the truth, but very uncharitable. While it is true that NTA received payment for the live coverage, it is also true that the NTA mobilized and deployed its outside broadcast crew from Jos to Yola for the coverage. The crew from Jos got to the location in good time and carried out equipment tests as well as uplink and downlink tests, which confirmed that the signals were in good condition. A few hours to the event, DOMSAT, which is Domestic Satellite Station at NTA headquarters, called to report of not receiving signals, but the uplink was sending out adequate power while DOMSAT was not receiving the signal. All the uplink equipment are in good working conditions and the downlink equipment also in good working condition. The only factor is the satellite service provider, Intelsat. DOMSAT had made similar report, which the head of SATCOM had sent a report to Intelsat and awaiting the report. This is a new development, a new challenge, which the NTA would look at critically and localize the fault and ensure it does not reoccur. It should, however, be noted that the NTA transmitted the AUN event soon after it overcame the technical glitch it experienced. NTA wishes to inform Nigerians that it has never been dictated to by the presidency in the course of discharging its responsibility since the current management came on board. The NTA also wishes to appeal to politicians to please leave it out of politics. NTA is a public broadcaster that belongs to all and will discharge its mandate according to the law establishing it. And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian and Kingsley after this break.
And you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now time for business news. Economic development expert seeks the establishment of more rice processing plants to meet local demand and curb smuggling and importation. Now let's join Joy Uso for details on business news.
Welcome. Recent ban on rice importation in Nigeria has no doubt led to smuggling and illegal importation of the products. The ban, which was meant to encourage local production, is being exploited by individuals who, in their desire to satisfy the need of some consumers, who still want the produce, resort to smuggling of the commodity into the country. President, International Institute for Training, Research and Economic Development, Dr. Sani Dawop, who disclosed this in an interview with Business News, says the country consumes about 7 to 8 million metric tons of rice annually, and that without proper processing capacity, the country would not be able to meet the demand of consumers.
There's another challenge. Because of the ECOWAS membership, which includes Nigeria, Benin Republic, and different other countries, you know, there's free flow of goods and services. So sometimes you find that these goods that are imported into one of these member ECOWAS countries actually have intention of landing into Nigeria. So we must be very, very strategic if we have to track down on some of this. Unfortunately, we cannot impose tariffs because of the partnership agreements that we have in terms of the ECOWAS member countries.
Dr. Sani commended the gradual increase in the number of companies who are in the business of rice production, expressing optimism that within the next 3 to 5 years, Nigeria should have a processing capacity of about 4 to 5 million metric tons of rice, provided that processing plans for the produce get funded and that government's policies remain favorable to those in the sector. And to manufacturing, the sector is known to be the backbone of industrialization. A country cannot be industrialized without having a strong, robust, and diversified manufacturing sector. National President, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, Mr. Ahmed Mansur, in an interview commended the federal government's ease of doing business drive, while also highlighting some challenges inhibiting operations of manufacturers. He said the sector needed a more friendlier environment that encourages and supports investments, re-emphasizing that without investment, no sector can have proper growth. And on regulations, Mr. Ahmed emphasized that regulatory agencies should endeavor to be more supportive toward investors to drive growth.
Some regulators tend to focus more on extracting revenue from the process of regulation, That should not be the number one principle. The number one principle is to help the sector to grow.
And to the commitment made by the Senate just last week to improve Nigeria's capital markets, a stockbroker has commended this development, but reinstates the need for multinationals operating in the shores of the country to be enlisted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange as a way to begin.
We need the market to be well deepened so that investors can be attracted more so. Federal government corporations and parastatals that are still not yet privatized need to be privatized and then listed on the exchange, so the market will be more attractive to both foreign investors and then domestic investors.
Still on stocks, the equities market opened for 4 trading days last week as the federal government of Nigeria declared Tuesday, 20th November 2018 a public holiday to mark the Eid al-Maulud celebrations. Meanwhile, a total turnover of 1.282 billion shares worth 23.142 billion naira in 11,467 deals were traded last week by investors on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The NSE All-Share Index and market capitalization depreciated by 1.18% to close the week at 31,678.70 and 11.565 trillion naira respectively. And with that, we wrap business news. Thanks for your time. I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package. Next for us now is Newspaper Review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Abayo Atoebi, just joined us. Abayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Abayo, good to see you. Kirian, let's begin
let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the nameplate. Obasanjo, Jonathan, others on our article is on page 4. And then Boko Haram, Buhari holds emergency meeting with service chiefs. You can find that story on page 5 of Daily Trust. Then the main headline, absence of 30 commissioners grounds activities at Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. All right, and just below that, police parade 33 suspected IPOB members over inspector's killing. Page 3 has details of the story. You could see the photograph of those arrested. And just below that, we have 15 cattle traders die in Kebbi auto crash. Kano will deliver 5 million votes to Buhari, Ganduje insists. That's on page 6. Now, why many banks are bound to fail, says a GTB managing director. It's on page 17 of the Daily Trust.
All right, let's take a look at the New Telegraph. New Telegraph from the top says, banks jittery as MTN and others veer into mobile banking. And you have a window of headlines below the nameplate. It says 33 IPOB members to be arraigned for murder and terrorism. That's according to the police. Gawan, former military head of state, Nigeria needs prayers more than ever. That's page 4. NCAA, that's Civil Aviation Authority, warns pilots and airlines over adverse weather conditions. Page 4. And there's an interview in the paper at pages 12 and 13. Obasanjo and ex-generals gang up against Buhari will fail, says Professor Tom David West. That's inside. Now, the lead story is, according to the paper, an exclusive. It says PDP governors and leaders work for Buhari's re-election. But you have a number of riders to that headline. It's a APC, it's a divided house. And PDP, president, and APC in self-delusion. Dominant parties scramble for middle belts and moles planted in parties will deliver north-central votes to Buhari. That's according to Kogi governor. And second lead story on the front page of a New Telegraph, NAF, that's Nigerian Air Force, bombs Boko Haram's location and convoys. And President Service Chiefs meet over killing of soldiers. With another headline there, traumatic childhood raises risk of psychotic experiences. All right, Kyria, then there's also a story on the Boko Haram issue. Maybe just take that from it. Sunday before
yes, the Daily Sun. Daily Sun has that as the main headline. As Buhari meets service chiefs again, Air Force bombards Boko Haram camps with a rider. Military probes bone killings, recovers slain soldiers and their bodies. Bye.
Yes, the president has met with service chief over the incident that happened on November 18th at Metele, which is a military base in Kukawa, in the precinct of the Lake Chad. The president is said to have expressed shock over the heavy casualties of soldiers. The senior special assistant to the president on the media, Garba Shehu, says the president has taken measures to ensure that such incidents that led to such fatalities are blocked. He said no responsible commander-in-chief will rest on his oars and allow terrorists to endanger military personnel and citizens across the country. The Minister of Defense has been sent to go to Chad to meet with the president as well as defense minister. And this is intended to tackle the insurgency that is actually brewing along the Chadian border. Chad is said to have withdrawn his troops from the joint multinational task force due to some security challenges he's having at home. But meanwhile, families of victims at the Metele attack are being contacted before public announcement will be made about the fatalities. Scores of military personnel may have paid the supreme sacrifice in the defense of our nation. Meanwhile, socio-economic right agenda project as well as conference of united political parties have called on the federal government to probe the military budget since 1999 up to 2018. They are saying that the attack at Metele base is probably because of the challenges the soldiers are having. And that the two groups adjudge that troops may not have been able to adequately respond to the attack because of inadequate facilities. They're talking about the turbaning ceremony that I reported. The Lamido of Adamawa turban Alhaji Atiku Abubakar as the Waziri of Adamawa. Alhaji Muhammad Aliyu Barkindo Mustafa did the turbaning of the 7th Waziri of Adamawa at his Fombiwa Palace. President Muhammad Buhari was represented by the FCT Minister Alhaji Mohammed Bello, while former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Goodluck Jonathan, and the Senate President and Speaker of the House of Representatives were also part there. The chairman of the People's Democratic Party and members serving and former governors of the party were also there. The Waziri is the second in command to the Lamido. The new Waziri says he accepts the honor with all sense of humility.
All right, let's return to the Daily Sun newspaper to take care of some of the headlines there. Besides the nameplate, we have a police IPOP clash. IGP, that's Inspector General of Police, orders recovery of snatched weapons. Is on page 39 of the Daily Sun. And just below the photograph of the Daily Sun, go on, warns Christians against revenge attacks. Page 40 has details of that. Then Wike, that's the governor of River State, orders arrest of collapsed buildings owner, sets up commission of inquiry. Now 15 cattle traders die in Kebbi, auto crash, on page 4 of the Daily Sun. And then the PDP challenges Buhari to debate with Atiku on page 10. Now, this issue of collapsed building, that has persisted in this country.
Yes, I mean, for a couple of months now, we have some respite. But again, this one happened on Friday. A 7-story building collapsed in Port Harcourt. For hours, it collapsed about 4:30. For hours, people were spirited persons were only using their hands to try and see what they could do before later on they had reinforcement. But so far, the good news is that 37 persons have been rescued from the collapsed building. Unfortunately, 6 of them have died. Governor Nyesom Wike, who was out of the country when it happened, immediately returned, and he has vowed that all those who were concerned in approving the building will be brought to book. All those who were involved in the construction, if found culpable, will also be brought to book. There is also the sad news of the death of Brigadier General Abba Kyari, the first military governor of North Central State. Brigadier Abba Kyari's death was reported yesterday. Brigadier Abba Kyari was military governor of North Central, and if you recall, in the activities that led to the wedding of the then head of state, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, to Victoria Zachary, Abakari was given the sobriquet Colonel Wedding Cake. He had the assignment to fly the wedding cake from London to Nigeria. But he presided over a Kaduna state that was very peaceful, obeying, and a melting pot of that for our nation.
All right, let's take a look at the editorial this morning. It's coming from Daily Trust newspaper, and it's at page 53. Averting a CSM epidemic. CSM stands for cerebrospinal meningitis, and of course, it says, sequel to the recent arrival of the Harmattan season with its harsh wind, dry weather, and bitter cold, Nigerians have been cautioned to stop living in crowded rooms and to be alert to the likely outbreak of CSM.
Well, CSM is cerebrospinal meningitis, and the editorial is warning us that the period from November to April is actually the period for the epidemic, which often comes up, particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa, and Nigeria, of course, is one of the nations that is always affected. The editorial identified that the last epidemic affected 2060s, and therefore they are calling for caution, particularly all those who have responsibility, and they are enjoining that there should be some activities carrying on, particularly vaccination, and then logistics put in place, and also the campaign to address people to stop sleeping in crowded places. Cerebrospinal meningitis is the inflammation of the cerebral cortex, which involves the brain and part of the spinal cord. It can be very deadly, particularly if there is delay in treating it.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we go into our conversation segment.
Now, let's take a background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi, which is going to set stage for discussion on the first topic this morning, which is on unearthing the motives behind corruption.
Corruption is a hydra-headed monster that world leaders have campaigned and are still campaigning against. With large sum of money taken from the African continent to foreign bank accounts by some public office holders, it has been a major source of poverty on the African continent. The inception of President Muhammadu Buhari reawakened the need to fight corruption not just out of Nigeria but the continent at large. Corruption has been a major reason why the economies of many countries, especially in Africa, have dwindled and made them to continue to remain underdeveloped. Some have questioned the possibility of winning this fight against corruption, while the present administration is proving that corruption has to be fought and won if meaningful progress needs to be made. This has seen many politicians and powerful public office holders being questioned, prosecuted, and convicted for alleged corruption. But the major question has been, why has corruption remained a thorn in the flesh and has continued from government to government, especially in Africa? Many causes have been highlighted as reasons for engaging in such acts. Greed, power, penchant for luxury, fear of poverty, and other materialistic desires have been advanced to be major reasons for engaging in corrupt practices. Unemployment, poor pay and incentives, lack of courage to challenge those perceived corrupt, high acceptance of corruption as a norm by the populace, slow judicial process, poor education and illiteracy are other reasons given for engaging in corrupt activities. Whatever the motives for engaging in corrupt practices, the consequences are so devastating and have stunned the development of the nation and continent in general. But then, what is responsible for corruption? Why has it continued to defy solutions despite being identified as a monster that needs to be dealt with? When will the concerted efforts of fighting corruption make the desired impact? Who should be in the fight against it? Where should it begin and how? An expert who has conducted a comprehensive research on the motive behind corruption will be answering these questions on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background. Indeed, we already have the researcher with us. It's been into this study for some 4 decades. It's Mr. Eric Olie. Mr. Eric Olie, pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Olie, you're indeed welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. As we have set to unearth the motives behind the practice of corrupt practice, we also like to ask you to also unearth the motives, behind these decades of research on motives of corruption.
Yes. Thank you very much. What I'm going to say today will be different from what you have been hearing before. This research has been going on since 1978, when the federal government sent me abroad for further course. And I observed one thing. I didn't see children on the street during school hours, running after vehicle. And I asked that question. What happened? Why are all your children during school hours? And they said, no, contrary to what, everybody here is not rich, but they have a social security system. Based on that, I also took time to review the life in abroad. And I found out that people there, their workers are comfortable and they're happy. And then I wanted to find out the secret, what makes them take, what is responsible for massive development in Europe. What is responsible for stealing of state funds, high-level tempo of stealing of state funds, corruption and poverty in Nigeria? Is it the same capitalist system that we are operating? If it is, where have we gone wrong? What did we do wrong? That all we see is massive underdevelopment, high-level tempo of corruption and poverty. Is there anything that these people did differently from us that we didn't do? Is there what they know that they didn't want to tell us? Because I believe that corruption can be fought from two angles: manifestation and inherent root cause. So based on that, I studied and found out all I was being told is that it is because they have a social security system that assure people of access to healthcare, housing, etc. Based on that, I came back to Nigeria after my course, and then having the opportunity to write to put down my observations. But despite it, I found myself in head of service, and then I discussed that with the head of service, Yahale Mohammed, what I observed in UK, and he said, put it in writing. And then there I started, and I wrote my first book, moving from third world to first, effective strategies to alleviate corruption and poverty in Africa. There, I also followed this up with another book, Africa Caught in the Web of Capitalism. The emphasis in these two books are to let Nigeria, or let the leaders in Africa know that you have to have a comprehensive social security system to enable those who cannot go to school to go to school, to enable us afford certain things. So, luckily for me, one senator saw the book and then told me that he's interested in the book, and he took the proposal before the House. And the next thing I heard is that we're not right for social security system. So he threw it back, literally threw it back to me and said, go back and continue with your research. Luckily, I now decided to go into in-depth research. What exactly is their problem? If we are fighting corruption, for instance, the present government is doing its best to fight the corruption for the axis of manifestation. How about the inherent root cause? Then I said, what is it that we didn't do? For lack of time, we now looked at the two key systems in the world. And we discovered that there are two key systems in the world, i.e. socialist system and capitalist system. We also discovered that socialist system, the initial sources of socialist system was based on one key factor. The proponents of the system were clear that the welfare of the society is in the hand of the state.
All right, sir. So, let's
okay.
pause you here for a while now,
okay.
and take you on another question. Now, and how are your findings relevant to the current fight against corruption,
Okay.
especially political corruption,
Okay.
which may involve bribe and payoffs and kickbacks and what have you?
Very good question. Now, what we discovered is that the socialist system, like I was trying, because it has a link between to the answer you're answering. The socialist system tried because the proponents of the system were clear on the rules of the government. Now, when the capitalist proponents of capitalist system came in, they were only saying, "Oh, look, allow us to take care to do the job, that is, to run the factories, and then pay you the taxes so that you can take care of social aspect." That was the disconnection. It is this disconnection that Africans didn't get. Now, what are this disconnection? Now, the Europe that is doing well are doing well because they put up they saw this disconnection. And that disconnection is that if you don't take care of people, there will be problem.
Are you advocating a system change or something? Because we have to address this based on what is prevalent in Nigeria, the type of corruption prevalent in Nigeria, which has, of course, has been sustained for a very long time. In fact, since independence.
Good question. What is prevalent now, or what you and I are seeing, is massive corruption on a high level. And why are people being corrupt? And what did Europe do? Europe saw that capitalist system cannot be practiced without making state structure or stroke welfare structure an integral part of the system. So Europe incorporated a social security system that made it possible for every child. Once you say you're a citizen of Europe, through the social structure, you are assured of healthcare, education, basic healthcare, basic education. You are assured of, for instance, that this state structure is encompassing. It makes you to have access. It's just an alternative. If you have no, if you are unemployed, there's a way to go. If you are sick, there's a way to go. If you want a house, there's a mortgage system available. If you need a car, you can rush into a car mart and buy through credit system.
Yeah, Mr. Ole, are you describing a uniform European system, or your research also recognizes that the texture of the socio-economic and indeed the political economy of Europe is variegated?
Yes.
In the sense that, I mean, because you appear to be sweeping across the whole of Europe.
No, what I'm trying to say, or what must be got from what I'm trying to say is this. Every good economy in Europe is mixed economy. A bit of socialist system and a bit of capitalist system. Now, if we are practicing capitalist system, why did we get it wrong? Like I said in my introduction, if Europe is doing well, why are they doing well? They are doing well because they took care of their citizens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, let me interject. When you say Europe, which Europe are you referring to?
Okay, let us.
Is it? Hold on a second. Is it the Europe after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, or the Europe before the collapse of the Berlin Wall? Because earlier you talked about two broad economic systems, capitalism and socialism. And we know the rise of socialism after the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. But even in the mix of socialism and capitalism, you already have welfare states, as you find in Scandinavia.
Let me bring it to the levels where everybody will understand me. Why are your children on the street? Are the children in Europe on the street?
They couldn't be on the street. I'm sorry, they couldn't be on the street in winter.
No. Every time they're on the street, chasing vehicle. Why are your children on the street? That is one. How easy is it for civil servants to own a decent house? How do they own their cars? When there's an accident, what happens? These are the alternatives. These are the state structures they put in place. the state structures that go straight to the needs of man, things that make him to look otherwise. For instance, if our children are on the street because they don't have access to healthcare and education, ask them, they will tell you. Maybe their uncle died. But in Europe, okay, let me just give you a little test. Drop a Nigerian, a child in Nigeria, drop him in Europe, and come back in 25 years' time. And drop an European child who has no father and come back in 25 years' time. The child dropped in Europe right now as I'm talking. Maybe the doctor that is treating you. Then the child dropped in Nigeria. Maybe the hangers on. Maybe. Unless something intervenes. That is the structure I'm talking about.
Sir.
That structure is what we are trying to discuss. I want you to understand it. What made that guy in Europe who has no father to be able to become the doctor that now treats you? And what makes the guy in Nigeria, dropped in Nigeria, to be the guy that is wasted on the street, uneducated? That is the state structure I'm talking about. So the area I'm trying to talk in reference to your question. Corruption has been high, persistent and perennial highly, because we are running a wrong social ideology that discourage growth, encourage stealing, encourage this thing.
Mr. Olie, you know, at the beginning of this conversation, yes. Right, I think I asked you a question that has to do with the relevance of this, your research,
to the current situation.
Exactly in Nigeria, because I wanted to relate it to Nigeria.
Okay,
because if you're advocating a system change, which of course you know is practically, you know, difficult to attain in our present setting. Now, but when you talk about motives behind corruption, we would like you to relate it to what Nigerians are currently experiencing as a nation, because while at the end of the day, we will try to find how to wriggle out of the menace. So how does this research really relate to us in the present system that is existing in the country?
And if I might add, Mr. Olie, Kirian has asked this question, has repeated it. Your thesis appears to be that the absence of a social security system is a facilitator of corruption in Nigeria.
So, not only in Nigeria, in Africa.
No, but let's focus on, I don't know what's going on in Benin Republic. I mean, we're talking about Nigeria. So how then does your finding help address this fundamental observation?
Let me stand a Nigerian worker, because that is the man you see. Now, if you have a state structure in place, this guy is not worried about his basic healthcare, basic education. Now, these are the two areas. His basic education, basic healthcare is taken care of. Now we'll come to advanced healthcare, advanced education. This same guy, advanced healthcare, you have an alternative. Because I say state structures are alternative. I'm saying, please don't steal government money. What alternative have you given me? Now, the state structures now, the issue of, say, you want to buy a car or anything, the state has a rule, a good mortgage system, a good credit system. Now, let me not digress. Advanced healthcare, taken care by insurance. So we have to have an insurance system as it is abroad. Advanced education, taken care by grants. Like Obama, if Obama were born in Nigeria, it would be maybe will not go to university. He went to university because there was a student loan. So let there be alternative for people to use. Then you can go into this guy again, the worker. He needs access to houses. How do you help him? Now, you bring in a mortgage system that is tailored within the confines of his legitimate income. Not somebody who is earning 1 million or 800,000 naira a year. Then you build a house of 10 million, and you want him to pay within three years. How does he do that? Then you move again. Why are people afraid of retirement? When they retire, they wait for months, years, and die. So the government will understand that is the key area they have to work. Then I'm picking it one by one. That's the guy standing before you. Basic healthcare is assured. And maybe the time you talk of funding, we'll come to how will it be funded. Basic healthcare for this guy is assured. Advanced healthcare, not coming to television and start asking for help me when you are sick. It's funded through insurance system. Is your insurance system working? Then this guy, maybe he wants a car. Because you have to understand why some people do what they do. He needs a car. Then are you saying you should buy the car, cash and carry? No, in Europe, you buy a car through credit system. Then what he's paying small. You won't feel it. You have addressed his housing, you have addressed his car. Then on the part of government, what is government doing? Massive investment in transportation, food industry, etc. To ensure affordability and availability.
Yeah, Mr. Ollier, thanks a lot for your perspective. I think that in terms of your summary of your research findings, I want to know how much historical background you took into consideration. Look, in this same country, we used to have a student loans board. A student loans board that in the end collapsed on account of non-repayment of loans by the students. That's one. Just let me hang on. You were talking about the credit system. We also used to have higher purchase arrangements in this country, which is like a credit, until, of course, the economy went haywire, Kirian. Then you now got into the cash and carry syndrome. So, in terms, again, of, as Kirian asked the question, if you are asking for a seismic shift in our social and economic ordering, how do we then get back into this former order? Because there's already a foundation for it, but the foundation, of course, bottomed out, so that the pressures that people have will reduce over time.
Good question. If you have a system and it's not working, the fact that it's not working doesn't mean it's not working in other countries. For instance, you talk about privatization. Why is it not working? In most cases, maybe you give to somebody who has no expertise, who has no resources. So if your credit system is not working, you go in and find out what is not working. Like I have stood the worker here. I have taken care of his basics. I've taken care of his advanced healthcare system. I've moved into his accommodation needs. I've moved into the issue of a pension scheme, that you must address that. For instance, if your workers are, after retirement, they stay years before they get their money, and you say it's not working, therefore it's not working, you leave it that way? No, go in and find out why it's not working. Then I want to make one categorical statement that research is hanging up. The research is saying, socialist system, the proponents of the system were clear that if the welfare of the state, of the individuals, is in the hands of the state, i.e., their healthcare, their housing, their everything. That's why Cuba is essentially a socialist this thing. Then, now the proponents of the capitalist system came in to say, "Oh, I don't like government running the business." That's why the capitalist system even came in. Let us do this and pay you money so that you can take care of the welfare structure. But they didn't state what will happen to millions of people who will not be able to, as we are seeing it, have access to healthcare, have access to education. So that decision is left to the country to take. That is where Africans missed it. If they have put the same structure as you have in UK today, making state structures an integral part of our social ideology, we won't be in the mess we find ourselves. We are in the mess we find ourselves because we are running a structure that says education is for the rich man or those who have money. Healthcare is for the rich man and those who have money.
Mr. Ollier, thank you very much. Again,
I wanted to land before you. Can I land? Can I land on this?
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. You made this point before.
Yes.
I just want us to go back so that we see what is potentially workable in your proposition.
Okay.
It is not as if there have been no official or institutional attempts at bridging this gap that you've talked about.
Yes.
For instance, the National Housing Fund. We also have the pension reform, which is 14 years in existence now. We also have the National Healthcare Act. So all of these are attempts to address. Just hang on a second. Let me ask my question.
Okay.
All these have been attempts, but unfortunately, they do not seem to address the issue, but they recognize that the points that you have raised needed to be addressed. What, therefore, from your research findings, is required to stimulate all of these institutional mechanisms that would seem to be moribund to be more effective?
Okay. Go straight to the point. Why you are the way you are. Start from the basics. Now, for instance, basic education. We must run a system where basic education are available to all and sundry, whether they have a father or not. Just as I gave you an example, that is what the system that are operating all over Europe. We must run a system where advanced healthcare system is available to all through a system. It's not a free meal. We must run a system where we own our properties through credit for legitimate income. A situation where you say a civil servant is earning 1 million, you build a house of 10 million, you tell him to pay over 3 years. It's not possible. Government must be involved in the affairs of men. So we must put a pension system that is workable, that addresses the inherent problem. Your workers should not retire and spend months. If it's not working, find out what is not working. They should get their retire in any country in Europe. The following month you're on the payroll. Find out what others have done. Don't go in and say, oh, we put on the system, it's not working. It's not working because you are not interested in making it work. And then you have to, hold on, let me learn, because this is such something. You have to go in, and we took us 40 years to come in. What we are trying to say to government, corruption, stealing of state fund will be will be very, very high, continue to be high, unless you make state structure an integral part of our social ideology. Why am I saying that? I kept the worker on the point, and I told you what Europe has done. His basic health care is taken care of. His basic education is taken care of. Advanced health care is taken care of. And then you move to how does he own basic things.
You have really raised a very made a pertinent point, in this conversation. But your analysis tilts to the fact that the issue of corruption in Nigeria is as a result of a system collapse, if you like, or a system that is not working, but that was not put in place. Kingsley talked about all the agencies established by government to address some of the issues you mentioned. Now, let's go to, as a final question, let's go to the issue of attitude of Nigerians. Are we in our attitudinal value in Nigeria, doesn't seem to align with what you are saying in terms of successful implementation of social ideologies?
What goes around comes around. If you run a structure that says discourage me from moving to the next level of life, I devise my own method. The point I was trying to make you to understand is that if Nigeria is a capitalist country, she must understand that capitalist system is unworkable, where basic necessities of life are only for the rich or those who can afford it. If you are running such a system, just forget it. Because when you run such a system, everybody looks at what he can do. What can I do? So in other words, what is happening to Nigeria is that because we are running a social ideology that is already wrong, then every human being in Nigeria looks at what can he do. Those who have religion go to it. Those who have ethnicity go to it. Those who are calling for restructuring come for it. Those who are calling for agitation come for it. All these things shouldn't have been for instance, now if we are talking about restructuring, people are talking about restructuring without even understanding why are we talking about restructuring.
Okay, Mr. Olie, we'll listen to the views some Nigerians are expressing via tweets. Now, DW Nigeria, that's the handle we always get from this respondent. It says there are lots of motives incentives for corruption already. Lack of social services, high cost of living, or doing businesses, and lack of justice in some cases.
And now from Mike Ayako, Major motives for corruption include personal greed, fear of future, and general decadence in society. People no longer question the sources of wealth of individuals as was in the past. People with questionable characters now receive the highest traditional titles, regardless.
And Idris Gidado Aliu tweets, now greed is the main driving force for corruption. By going back to our religious values with sincerity, it will help in changing our attitude positively, hence drastically reduce corrupt tendencies.
Now, Abdul Musa, corruption is found in both public and private workplaces. Some of the reasons include greed, attitude, poor remuneration, societal and environmental factors. Corruption can be reduced to the barest level if the above factors are critically analyzed and addressed.
Joseph Aidon tweets, lack of decency and ostentatious lifestyle have been the driving force behind corruption in Nigeria. People must learn to wait for their own time.
Onoye Victor, drastic measures must be taken against the corruption. It has become part of us. Our new generation is born into it, so it is in our blood. Without organized welfare system and moral regeneration, corruption would be worse. Good has taken over evil.
All right. Well, Kirian, I think that's the much I will take. Mr. Olie, incidentally, we are having a second topic for discussion this morning, and it has to do with ethical reorientation in terms of our values and what we hold. What we hold there as a country, and therefore as the moral foundation for creating a new system. I would like to thank you. I'm sure that there will be some other, just hold on a second. There will be some other opportunity to have you join us in discussing this particular subject. But in particular, drilling into the thesis that you have developed, why the absence of a social security system is perhaps the foundation for lingering corruption in Nigeria. But I will advise that you also factor in what systemic or institutional measures have been brought in over the years and why those measures have failed. On that note, Mr. Eric Olie, would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take on our second topic. All right, you're welcome back. If you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We just signed off our first guest, who was discussing the foundations of corruption and, of course, what his prognosis will be in terms of dealing with it. Our second topic for conversation this morning is indeed an extension of the very first, Kirian.
Yes, unfortunately, because, the need to retrace steps and find the path that will take Nigeria to the promised land by doing the right thing.
Exactly, and values and ethics that will set national standards, help us pursue them, and reward compliance while punishing violation.
But first, there is a need to change the attitudes of the citizens to think and act positively.
All right, Kieran, we already have guests with us in the studios to elaborate further on this. Let's welcome Dr. Uyem Akpabio, who's Executive Director and CEO of the Institute for Ethics and Professional Studies. Dr. Uyem Akpabio, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you,
okay.
Kieran. Thank you for having me.
We also have with us a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Mr. Obina Rwakpa, is a public affairs analyst. Obina, pleasure to have you again. And also here with us in the studios is Imam Noura Khalil, is the chief imam of the Akpo Legislative Mosque. Is popularly referred to, we understand, as the digital imam.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Digital imam, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and we also have Reverend Father Chris Bologo, Vicar General, Abuja. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Not a Vicar General, but Parish Priest of Our Lady Queen of Peace Parish, Utago.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, sir. And he used to be my parish priest in Gwarimpa.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pleasure welcoming you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and also from our Ibadan studio is Professor Michael Ezenwa, President of Psychological Society of Nigeria. It's nice to have you this morning from Ibadan. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Kirian and Nigerians.
Gentlemen and lady, ethics, as a moral principle that governs society's behavior and the conduct of activities in different aspects of life is very critical in terms of developing a nation. And I would like to ask the Imam to lead us in this conversation by way of letting us into what ethics and values should mean to every Nigerian.
Well, to start with, ethics and values are very important, and they simply mean doing the right thing at the right time, in the right place, and to channel it to the right person. If I'm to elaborate this, I will say that understanding what is right, doing what is right in a beautiful way, and doing what is important at the time required. Because Nigeria today lacks what is important, the understanding of what is important to us and how to go about doing it. That is to say, our values, whether social values, personal values, religious values, and societal and cultural values are missing because we don't understand that we have to do the right thing, and that is values.
Okay, well, Imam Nura, thank you very much. We'll return to you. Dr. Uye Makpabio, and indeed the other guests as well as our viewers, you would know that a couple of weeks ago, we actually started this conversation on values and ethics, and a lot of perspectives as to what went wrong and why we are where we are today with regard to our ethical foundations, and therefore the symptoms that we find in different facets of our national life. What, because but we have 5 guests. By the time you start, getting back into what went wrong, we probably will not have enough time for this conversation. What is it that propels people to continue to scorn the ethical values that are otherwise the foundation of a healthy and thriving society? Dr. Uye Makpabio.
Thank you very much. I would want us to look at 2 perspectives. The issue of mentality, and then, which also goes with consciousness, having the consciousness or the mentality of what is good or right. But there is also the aspect of being ethically intelligent, that is, having the skill, the understanding to apply what you know is right or good. But you cannot do anything unless you have the capacity to do so. So what is it that motivates you to do what you do? And what capacity do you have to do what you do? Now, people coming from a personal perspective, do you have a personal responsibility to do what is right and wrong? So what are your motivations? Now, then what about the government? Do you have a system that works? We also look at leadership. Do you have leadership responsibility? We are all talking about capacity, skill, and all that. We talk a lot about skills, about values and all that. But the issue of capacity is very important. Capacity to do what is right, capacity to do what is right. What is the motivating factor? Value, we all know, is a baseline, it's a foundation. Why will I take a certain action? Except there is value added to my life, either as a citizen, as an individual, and as a professional. Why would you want to do something that is right? You have the skill, you have the knowledge to do, you have the know-how, but Why would you not put that to useful purpose? It is only because you do not have that intelligence, that the ethical intelligence to bring your skill to serve. Because as a professional, your skill and your profession does not add value except there is somebody that is satisfied and being served by that skill.
Okay, now speaking from professional point of view, that's applied ethics. But I'd like to go to Reverend Father Bologo. The inability of living ethical life, systemizing, defending, and recommending concept of what is wrong and right are seen by many as the bane of good ethical practice, generally speaking. What are your thoughts?
I think the moral value system in our country has broken down almost completely. And part of it is because we've had very bad role models. It's been going on for a very long time. And so we have to be fair to the younger generation. They have seen elders do the wrong things over and over and over and over. And so they have fallen into that trap. So it's difficult, like Dr. Pabio said, the capacity to do the right thing has been drastically reduced by seeing everyday wrong things being done by elders. There are, first of all, parents. Parents are the first role models of children. Second are teachers in school, and then society in general. How are parents being good role models for their children? What values do they uphold and pass on to their children? For those who have the resources, I think parents are paying a good attention to the, academic, upbringing of their children. They can pay all kinds of monies to schools for their children to get education. But the morals, the correct values, are they seriously in search of this for their children? And then in school, the teachers, what kind of teachers do we have? Are they the best? Teachers are supposed to be the best. But to have the best teachers, you also need to pay them well. Are we paying teachers well so we can have the best? And then the larger society. We have had very bad leaders from top to bottom. Even some religious leaders, some of us are not good example to follow us. So the younger ones have very few good role models to follow. And so we have gotten into this pit of the wrong things occurring every now and then. Good example. People make money without hard work, particularly politicians. These are local people who live in their villages, who live in their towns. They get elected into positions 1 year, 2 years, and they live larger than life. And the younger ones who were seeing them in their community know that this used to be one of us here. In 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, she's now living larger than life. So they will ask themselves, what's the essence of working so hard, even going to school properly? If politicians are forging results, are forging, NYSC certificates, they would be asking themselves, then why do I have to work very hard to get those things legitimately? So a whole lot of things put together have driven down our value system. Respect for other people's faith. Do I respect the Islamic faith? Do I respect, the Christian faith? Respect for opinions of others? All those things have gone down the drain. So we need thorough rebuilding of this. Good role models, those who are afraid of taking what is not theirs and who live by their means, those who respect others' faith, those who respect others' opinions, those who would not forge anything, no matter what they lose. They're not going to forge any certificate.
All right, Father Bologo, thank you very much. Let's bring in now Obinna Irakpa. Ms. Obinna Irakpa, the erosion of our ethical foundations obviously has left us in a virtual state of nature. Some would say anarchy. What are your thoughts?
You know, Chinua Achebe said, if you don't know where the rain started beating you, you won't know where it stopped. The long and short of it is, listening to the very erudite discussants here, it's obvious to you that we've considered the fact that things have gone wrong. And just coming up from your question. But it will be important that I bring it out there. There's a reason why in every society you have what we call the ombudsman. Far back in society, you would go to the compound junction and see tubers of yam and drop your cowrie, pick your tubers, and go. There was a value system in place. But do not also forget that there was also another set of rules that tended towards taboos. Everyone looked out for one another. The palm wine tapper on the tree looked out for what was going on the ground and had the mind to report, because there was a system that said if you did not report, something would happen to you. Someone said that what never gets measured never gets done. What has happened to us, like the Reverend gentleman said, is that we have left certain persons to become role models to us. And when certain people do certain things like the forgery he talked about, nothing happens to those people. So what do you expect from me, a young man that is growing? My people say when the mother goat is eating grass, the children look at the mouth. He started by talking about the family system. When mothers see house helps sweeping the house and their daughters cross their legs and watch TV, it begins from there. So someone like me wants to get married, and my girlfriend wants to sit down and watch me sweep the house, and she crosses her legs doing manicure and pedicure. And then you're wondering why marriages are beginning to have challenges. Because if that man begins to see some other girl that would do that for him, he looks outside. So the marriage institution begins to also have a problem. Talk about the civil service. We used to have super pump sex. Aida just passed on. God bless his soul. What was the testimony of Mr. Aida? The fact that he served about 3 heads of state. What did he do right? What files passed through his table that he talked to the head of state then and said, sir, this would not fly, because if it happens, we will be setting wrong precedents. So look at it generally. Those of us who are younger now are coming in. Then go back to the private sector. We have seen banks and other institutions do round tripping. Take money from government at a certain rate, 197 naira, and go sell at 360 naira. And then we hear their names. The next time, you don't hear anymore. So the question is, we talked about erosion. We have had situations where people who hold positions have collected bribes and have looked the other way. And then you expect me, like the Reverend gentleman said, to now sit back and follow the right due process when I see things going the other way and people being celebrated for the wrong reasons. But that having been said, it's called the 80-20 rule. Only 20% of us can turn around the 80% that we need to do a total turnaround. I still believe that there are good people in this nation. But again, that's also where the challenge begins to happen. We had a Dora Queen in the country whom we celebrated for what she did in NAFDAC. Since Dora left there, I also have seen a few other people try their best. But that is the challenge with Nigeria. We most times celebrate personalities and not build systems. And I'm sure you've had this discussion on this platform several times. Can we begin to build systems? And I'll give you an example. A gentleman was leaving his house and thought he could occupy his child. So he took a full-page advertorial on a newspaper and tore it to shreds and dropped it and asked the son, rearrange this paper by the time I come back from work. In 1 hour's time, he came out and saw that the thing was rearranged. And asked the son, and he shredded out the face of a man on it. And then I looked at it, and there was a map of Nigeria on the other side. Once I could fix the head of the man and turned it, the map of Nigeria was in shape. If we can fix the man, fix the systems, Nigeria will be fixed.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's go over to Ibadan, where we have Professor Michael Ezenwa. It is said that ethical questions are inescapable part of being human, but some people would prefer to play the devil's advocate by questioning ethical values. Why should I follow this concept? Why not, as Father Bologo said, do it the other way and get to my destination? What are your thoughts with respect to the dwindling ethical values in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Kirian, again. I represent, as the president, Nigerian Psychological Association. not Nigerian society psychology or something like that, I said earlier. Back to the question, a lot of the speakers have made very important points, especially the Reverend Father. Psychologists are people who study behavior. Now, behavior, psychologists say, is a factor of its consequence. In other words, when people do something, others watch to see the reaction. If the reaction is acceptable, they tend to repeat it. If the reaction is aversive, they tend to avoid it. That's number one we need to note. The second point is about the family. The family is the fundamental place where the child is formed. And within the family circle, the parents, particularly the mother, is number one in charge. The family provides the child socialization. The first point of socialization is the family. And so, the child needs the family. And I emphasize, particularly the mother. The child first learns about the mother because of the breast milk. As the mother feeds the child looks at the mother and gradually starts to pick the ethos, the values of society through the mother. Therefore, the role of the mother is very, very critical. We need to moderate our search for material things, our search for activities beyond the home. The parents have a responsibility to look at what the child learns. The childhood period is a fundamental period. Once the childhood period has been formed, the rest is just mere unfolding of the prototype. Therefore, the emphasis should be parents should look at their children. They should give the children what they require in terms of culture, in terms of values, in terms of what this child would be in future. Once the child has passed that stage, you have little or nothing to do. The basic prototype will start to unfold. So, and this is why, if you look at our society today, the emphasis is on getting out there. Families leave the children to media, to television, to radio, to somebody talked about house help or domestic help, to people who are not mature enough or prepared to take the roles of the parents. In fact, nobody can do that. And that is why computer scientists say garbage in, garbage out. When the child has received nothing, as it were, in terms of cultural values, the child also gives anything than cultural values. I think I want to stop at this point for the time being.
Professor Michael Ezenwa, I want to take the privilege of still staying with you, because you, along with the other guests, you have raised some points. But is it necessarily the case, considering our historical experience, that it was the collapse of the family that led also to the collapse of our ethical system? Did the family fall first, or there were other institutions that collapsed first?
Personality. Personality we describe as that constant part of the individual that characterizes him, or yes, makes him unique. Those aspects of him that make him unique. And these aspects are formed during the fundamental period, basically. And that is where the family plays a major role, and the immediate society. And like I said earlier, once this has gone wrong, your guess is as good as mine. And so, everything is about the family. The proper orientation is the key. Once the child has formed, in fact, in some cultures, parents, particularly the mother, is not allowed to take such a job that will not give her enough attention until the child is about 3, 4 years, 5 years. Because it's believed by some societies that at that moment, the matrix is formed. The child can hardly deviate significantly far from what has been established. So it is the rule. The individual is like the iron. Once it's cold, you can hardly bend it. So we need once more to go back to the family. We need to go back to the basic units. Parents need more effort on their children. I agree completely that the child has the home as the first point, and once the home is brought in the proper focus, and this is not just about talking, it's about what the parents also do. Learning by example. Because it is said that people hear more what you do, or use more what you do than what you say. Therefore, while parents model their children, they look at the activities of the child from day to day, and they act the same. The child forms properly. But when the parents are in schism, they come to the home, they quarrel. Sometimes they don't see the children 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, because when they come home, the child has slept, has watched television enough, has watched this and that, and taken in from those sources answers he could interpret, or she could interpret. The parents are losing, the society is losing, everybody is losing. And that child will grow to become the criminal that the police will go and arrest. And the state will spend money to feed him in the prison. A child who ordinarily would have been contributing significantly to the development of the country if the parents had done their bits at the right time. This is my stake.
We once again appreciate you for your contribution this morning from our Ibadan Network Center. Let's return to Abuja, and I'll be talking to Imam Nura Khalil. From all indications and from all our guests have said this morning, it appears that we have a very complex ethical problems. It could be individual or private. It could be involving organizations, communities as well. Now, as an imam who admonishes your followers on almost on daily basis, what do you understand about the reason for deliberate negation of ethical values by grown-ups?
Well, let me start by tipping something into the question asked the professor. I want to agree that it is the society itself that broken before the family. Absolutely. Because in our time, during our, when we were children, if you did something wrong, your neighbor, the father, the head of the family in your neighbor will deal with you. He will not wait until your father come to do something. Therefore, you consider every elderly person in the society your father, not only your biological father. And that is why you see when you are doing you were doing something wrong, and you observe that there is elderly person coming, you will stop automatically, and you cannot misbehave in the society. That is why we are brought up the way we were brought up. Now, coming back to your question, well, I think we have to make a kind of renovation of the way we think in this country, because everything is getting worse. What we're supposed to do is to identify what are our problems. We are now agitating for society reform. Our society has gone wrong, things are not moving right, and these are the causes. Let's rethink. Are we doing the right thing? Are we supposed to be in this the way we are now? The only way to change this is let's change our educational system. Our educational system is breeding moral decay in our society because we are more concerned of theories, teaching our children just to memorize theories, speak good English, read very well. But that moral education is not important in our schools. Our religious institutions are not working the way they're supposed to work. You said, I preach on daily basis in my mosque. What am I preaching? Is it the social values that we need that I'm preaching? Or am I preaching hatred? Or am I increasing problems to my society? Respect is no more taught in our mosques and churches. Respect to not only the elders. You know, when you are talking of value, you are talking of self-realization, self-respect, and respect to others. The Almighty said in the Quran that He has respected human being. So when we are teaching people to respect one another on the basis of humanity, not on the basis of my language, on the basis of my geographical location, on the basis of my religion, then we are now reviving the core values that we need in our society. That is the beginning of the reform.
Okay, Imam Khalid, thank you very much. Let's also at this time bring in Reverend Father Chris Bologo. Well, a variant of the question to which the Imam has just responded to. There are some persons who are concerned that the religious institution, which is supposed to be one of the bulwark against moral decadence, would appear itself to have been failing, that in spite of the fact that you have seen a phenomenal growth in a number of places of worship, unfortunately, that is also seen an escalation in the challenges that we face with our morality and value system. Where is it that the religious institution has got it wrong, and what can be done to ensure that the religious institution does in fact play a positive catalytic role in reforming our ethical values?
Thank you very much for that question. And following up from what Professor Eze said, you know, history, I think government may have had its reason for taking over schools from the missions, but I think that was a serious disadvantage to the society. It dealt a great blow to moral upbringing, spiritual upbringing of children in schools. Schools were taken away from, you know, missionaries, from churches, and so on. And that brought down the emphasis on moral upbringing of children. Way forward, we have come to realize that without private schools, you know, we would have even been worse off in terms of, you know, education, private nursery, primary schools, private secondary schools. So we've actually gone beyond that stage. We have realized after that huge mistake that government made, that government alone cannot take care of education. So we're talking of private schools. So you ask the question, now that there is clamor for return of mission schools, and in some states it's already been done, and private individuals are also building schools, churches are building schools, mosques are building schools, you ask, what value system are they putting in place? Going back to your question, what value system are churches that have schools inculcating in the pupils, in the students? You hear these days of schools that are doing all kinds of things to improve their rating. So they teach children, you know, in exam halls, exam malpractice is very common. In fact, coming back to parents, parents are here now, come together and pay teachers to teach students in WAEC halls. And the proprietors of these schools, they know these things. The owners of these schools know these things. So the church is also failing in a very big way. You know, like, Father George Husani says, even religious leaders are forgetting the resurrection and are insisting on the here and now, making it here. That's what you hear on television almost every Sunday. Get rich quick, get this and that. If you pray, you'll be on top. Those things are good. We need to be on top. We need to survive. We need to succeed. But the overemphasis on the here and now has destroyed the moral fabric of our society. It has done that. You know, I like it when I hear Sanusi, the Emir of Kano, say that in fact, mosques should be turned into schools. Churches should be turned into schools. Most of these churches should be turned into schools. At least they can do school from Monday to Friday. Sunday they worship. I think we're having even more churches than schools now. If we put the number of mosques and churches we have, they're more than the schools we have. But why is it that the moral value is still on the downward slide? Because we're not taking it seriously. As I said at the beginning, even the religious leaders, the moral values that they represent are not the good ones. You know, what the role models we have even amongst religious leaders, not all are fantastic. So we have a long way to go. Both Christians and Muslims, we have a long way to go. The values we emphasize are totally out of place.
Yes, thank you indeed. You know, the ethical questions, explore what Aristotle called life well lived, and recalling the position of Professor Zenwa in Ibadan, which of course he laid a background from the family aspect of this. And Kingsley also asked a question that bordered on who fell. Is it the family that fell or the society? And Imam Khalil did say that the society actually broke down the family. And going back to the family, as the nucleus of society, I'd like to ask Dr. Akwapi to come in here as a lady among us who understands what family is all about. Where did the family fail? What is the point of departure from what used to be and what actually took over the society that precipitated, the current situation of a moral and the ethical decadence in our society?
The family is the molding ground for character. But I want to take the question from the point of view that anything that takes the responsibility away from the individual cannot be sustained. In that way, talking of whether it's the family or the society, because the individual is either in the family or in the society. So anything that takes away the responsibility from the individual cannot be sustained. And the responsibility you are expecting from the individual cannot go beyond the capacity of that individual. And then we have been told, our guest here gave a scenario of what used to happen in the past. Members of the community can collectively bring up children without any harassment. But we also know that we are in a world that is dynamic. While some of those methods and methodologies may not be expedient at the moment, just because things have changed. You can imagine in our societies and things like with all sorts of these things, you say that somebody, you don't know the person that is trying to caution your child, with all mutual suspicion, there's no cooperation and all that, So things have changed. So that responsibility, we should take that responsibility back to the individual. Because if you take a personal responsibility for your action, then you will be a lot more purposeful. You will be reflective. The family also has a responsibility by changing the methodology. Now, what is happening now? There's so much trading mentality all over, from family to society. So that right at the family is now training the child to trade, the mentality to trade, and the trading is getting profit without a product or service. Because profit is a mentality, but service orientation is professionalism. So the family is now not training the child to have self-esteem and to now get some skill that is from the skill that you will generate or earn. What are we talking about? Using value as a currency. That is, for you to be able to get anything of value, you must be able to give something of value. And to give something of value means you must develop capacity to be of relevance to somebody and so on. So that responsibility to the individual is important, and that takes us to capacity.
All right, Dr. Uyuma-Akpabio, thank you very much. Obina Ruakwa, let's bring you again into the conversation. When I asked Professor Ezenwa the question of, look, who fell first, was society or the family? But Imam Khalid then responded by saying, look, society fell first before the family, from our Nigerian experience. Now, Dr. Akpabio also makes the point validly that the individual has to take responsibility, but that taking responsibility means you have to have capacity. The individual is the basis of the family, and it is the family that is also the basis of the society. But of course, I agree with the perspective that it was the society that collapsed first. But to now rebuild the society, what is the family expected to do? Because the family also is the foundation of society. I'm asking this question against the background of whether we, in fact, truly understand our family setting versus the experience elsewhere. Elsewhere in advanced countries, the role of single mothers, the role of broken homes, and so on and so forth have been identified as causative factors of some of the social challenges that they are having. But for us here, you find that even in a close-knit family, you are having some of the challenges that we are referring to, and therefore having the problem of the ethical challenge that the country faces. So how then do we begin to address that against the background of, again, imitation as a psychology, that everybody is in a rat race? You find a family, husband and wife with children, they will push their daughters out to go on prostitution in Europe. Prostitution, just go and make the money and come. Let's get out of this poverty very quickly. So what is it that we need to do?
Thank you very much. I beg to differ with our daddy, the Ostaz. And then back to you, it is the chicken and egg argument which comes first. But remember that there's microcosm and then there's macrocosm. There's a cat and there's a horse, which comes first. The family is the basic foundation, and I'm happy you've excellently marshaled it out. Sir, by the psychologists will tell you, I borrowed psychology for 4 years in the university. I can tell you authoritatively that by the age of 6, a child's personality is formed. And like Prof said, Ezenwa said, who forms the personality of the child? Is it the teacher in the school who himself may already have come from a dysfunctional family? Or is it the mother who should take personal responsibility? It's about the 90-10 principle, like Stephen Covey will tell you. 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% is how you respond to it. So even if you go out there and somebody tells your child something wrong, you have a 90% opportunity to correct that child. My son went to school and lost his shoes. And then we kept bearing it on the teacher and kept insisting that this shoe was lost in this particular place. We got that shoe back. And for me, that spoke volumes about the quality of the school he goes to and the integrity of the system they have set up, because it was picked up by a cleaner and we finally found it down the road. Now, the question I need to ask is, that cleaner picked up a shoe he could have sold for almost more than the salary he is paid. Why did he return the shoes? Go back and investigate the family that cleaner came from. I just saw something on NTA yesterday, one graduation ceremony or 2 days ago, and it came down to a security man, or you've also heard of the drivers that picked up dollars and returned them. You've talked about the ones at the airport. Find out the family these people came from. Find out the religious institutions that are preaching to them. So I want to concede that it's a chicken and egg thing. We may not begin to go into the argument. Then back to your question on what is the way forward. Let's call a spade a spade. We have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, starting from me, number one. I have done some things that I'm not proud of, but I'm still alive, and there's hope. So I'm ready to listen to my religious leaders preach. But I also, like she said, need to investigate the foundation, because if the foundation is destroyed, like the Holy Book, the Bible says, what can the righteous do? So people should begin to weigh all spirits, begin to understand exactly the people they're following. Because if you follow the wrong person, you're going to self-destruct. So it comes down to also capacity. There are three things that determine how far a man goes. The books you read, the people you associate with, and the environment you operate in. So may we start from the family and groom the next generation. Even if our generation, like Shoyinka said, the wasted generation, I argue with him, it's not a wasted generation. The long and short of it is that I have had reason to contest election. And I'm going to say it publicly here, that my result was written on Friday and announced on Saturday, even before the election started. I still see the same thing happen in 2018, where results are written in Abuja when people contested election and far away in some other states. And these young people are watching. It happened to me personally. But have I taken bitterness to that? No, no malice intended. I have made up my mind to be part of solving that problem. What am I doing? I'm reading up how Barack Obama became a president in America. I'm trying to find out what he did. I'm trying to find out the system in America that made it possible for someone who had, of color to arrive to the point where he arrived in, what system worked. So it comes down to system. Can we, and I've told you this thing, Kingsley Osadolo, I've told you this thing, Mr. Kirian, until we come to the point when we concede that we need to have a stakeholders meeting, this 2 hours discussion may not cut it.
Yes,
we need to have a stakeholders meeting where schools,
running out of time.
faith-based institutions, and everybody comes to discuss. The youth must come. You must do a bottom-up approach to this matter.
Thank you. And time cannot allow us to go further because there could be opportunities more to bring this topic on our table as we move on. But for now, let's let Nigerians know what others are saying through tweets. Law Alpha says Nigerians should be challenged by the character of transparency and selfless service as enunciated by President Buhari.
Abdul Musa, very quickly, it says, in order to influence attitudinal changes in relation to values and ethics, the society must be seen to be just and fair. No matter the campaigns, if you deny citizens what is due to them, don't expect any change in value and ethical reorientation.
Comrade Ngala, it is the duty of parents and teachers to teach moral values to the younger generation.
It says, Festus Akimboye, we can only change our attitudes when we also change our behavior. Sad that the moral values taught in the past are no longer there. Strong families will go a long way in bringing about change to our society. Stop celebrating corrupt people.
All right, and that's how we conclude this segment of our conversation today on Good Morning Nigeria, and we'd like to appreciate our guests who did justice to this topic. Dr. Uyim Abibio, Executive Director, CEO, Institute for Ethics and Professional Studies. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Obina Irabai is a familiar face here on Good Morning Nigeria, a public affairs analyst. Thank you again for being part of our show today. And Imam Nora Khalil is also a regular face here. Imam, thank you for coming. He's the Chief Imam of Apo Legislative Mosque. Thank you.
Thank you
he is, of course, the digital Imam. And Father Chris Bologo, of course, we'd like to thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And of course, our friend and brother, Professor Michael Ezenwa, who reached us from our Ibadan Network Center. Thank you indeed for coming.
All right, Kirian, I think that's the much that we can take. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go into our complementary segments, as sports business and sports foreign and others. But we're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock, and of course, we'll be having a new edition. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. Do have a wonderful day.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. Have a great day.